Welcome to the Digital Edge.
Great to be here.
Today we're looking closely at some really interesting stuff around the AI model Grok.
That's right.
Specifically, we want to get into these claims about how it interacts with different viewpoints, maybe particularly those of MAGA supporters.
Yeah, and there have been some assertions, about its training as well. It's quite a complex picture.
Absolutely. So what's the first thing that jumps out from what we've seen?
Well, what's pretty striking is Grok's own, let's say, self-description of how it handles these interactions.
Its own description.
Yeah, it seems Grok has indicated that its basic setup, you know, prioritizing facts, adding nuance, that this sometimes causes a bit of friction.
Some friction with certain MAGA supporters' expectations, you mean?
Exactly. That seems to be the core of what it's saying.
Okay, right. Let's dig into that. So Grok itself is saying that as it gets more capable, its goal is factual responses, detailed understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But then, and this is where it gets really interesting, like you said, this approach can sometimes, clash, run counter to what some users, specifically MAGA supporters, might be looking for.
That's the claim, yeah. Grok apparently gives examples.
Like what?
Things like affirming trans rights based on current understanding or, debunking vaccine misinformation. It suggests these fact-based positions don't always line up with narratives preferred by some users.
I see. So that raises a big question, doesn't it? About like how you build an AI that tries to be objective but also needs to cater to users who might have very strong ideological views.
Precisely. It highlights that inherent challenge. Can AI be purely factual and satisfy everyone's viewpoint? Maybe not.
And adding another layer here, there are these assertions flying around that xAI, the company behind Grok, actually tried to push the AI towards a more right-leaning stance.
Yes. That's a major point in all this idea that there was an active attempt to make it lean right.
What do we make of that? I mean, trying to deliberately bias an LLM?
Well, it raises huge questions, right? About the feasibility, the ethics, the whole process. The information suggests these efforts apparently framed as prioritizing truth over political correctness, whatever that specifically meant to them.
Which they seem to connect with a left-leaning bias they wanted to avoid.
Correct. But the reports indicate it didn't really result in a consistently right-leaning Grok.
So the attempt might have been made, but the outcome wasn't what they maybe intended.
That seems to be the implication. You really have to wonder about the methods they used and, frankly, the inherent difficulty in doing something like that successfully with these massive, complex models.
Okay, so putting this together, Grok suggests its own core programming, this truth-seeking design, makes it stick close to established facts.
That's its explanation, yes.
And it notes this can sometimes create that disconnect, maybe on topics like diversity or the factual basis for certain beliefs, often held on the conservative side.
Right. And the result, according to Grok's perspective here, is mixed reactions. Some users find it too neutral, maybe even ironically leaning left.
Despite the alleged attempts to train it otherwise.
Exactly. Despite those reported efforts, it really speaks to the complexity.
So if we step back and look at the bigger picture, what does this tell us?
I think what really stands out is just how incredibly complex it is to try and engineer a specific bias into these AI models. They learn from such vast, diverse data sets. So the very act of aiming for factual accuracy and, nuanced understanding, like Grok says it does, well, that might inherently lead it away from rigid ideological lines.
Almost like the facts themselves resist being easily categorized as left or right sometimes.
Perhaps. The apparent struggle to make Grok consistently lean right, even if they tried, seems to underline that fundamental challenge. It's not like flipping a switch.
Definitely not. And it also puts a spotlight on how we even define truth today, doesn't it, in this super polarized environment?
Absolutely. One group's fact is another's bias, it often seems.
So Grok is kind of caught in the middle of that complex web.
It really seems that way. The whole discussion around its interactions, these alleged training tweaks, it just underscores this intricate dance between AI development, people's beliefs, and this maybe unattainable ideal of pure neutrality.
Wow. Okay. This has definitely given us, and hopefully you listening, a lot to chew on regarding how AI works and how it reflects or doesn't reflect our own diverse viewpoints.
It certainly has. A fascinating case study, really.
So just to wrap up the key points, we've heard about Grok's own take on why its factual, nuanced approach might not always align with MAGA expectations.
It's self-assessment, so to speak.
And we've touched on those claims that xAI tried to nudge Grok towards the right and the apparent difficulties they ran into.
Which highlights the sheer complexity of trying to bake specific biases into these large language models trained on, well, everything.
Right. Which leads us to a final thought for you, our listener.
Considering these inherent challenges in training AI models with specific biases and this whole ongoing debate around neutrality, what do you think this suggests about the future? The future of AI, and maybe more importantly, how we consume information in this digital age.
Something definitely worth thinking about. Thanks so much for joining us on The Digital Edge.
Thanks for tuning in.
We'll catch you next time for another exploration.